You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I hope wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing pretty bloody well. The guest that you're about to hear from should need no introduction, but it might. It's Al Jourgensen, Uncle Al, the mastermind behind Ministry and too many other bands to mention. The reason for the conversation was to have a discussion about the new album from Ministry called AmeriKKKant. We do that, but we talk about a whole heap of other shit as well. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get to it. Here he is, Uncle Al. Here he is, Uncle Al. It's Andy Mackay-Smith calling from Queensland in Australia. Sir, how are you?
Hello, Andy. I'm doing well.
It's a pleasure to chat to you, mate. Before we get things underway, I've just got to congratulate you on a stellar career. I've been following it since at least Psalm 69, and Filthpig is an album that's made its way into my top 10 albums of all time. It's an album that I truly love, so I just wanted to get the fanboy in me out of the way before we kick off, if that's okay, and say thank you so much for creating Filthpig.
That's fantastic, but it's funny you mentioned Filthpig, because this new album, is so similar in my mind to that album. So let's talk about it.
Okay, so yeah, I've only listened to it a couple of times because I only got a copy yesterday. So on that note, how is it similar to Filthpig? Because I know that there's a lot of, there always is a lot of so-called politically, when I say so-called politically charged lyrics, you're always being very observant and you do have a social conscience. So how is it similar? Is it due to the lyrics or the way that you frame some of the musicality?
It's the way that we frame the musicality. The lyrics are completely different than Filthpig. Filthpig was a personal album, more about things that were going on personally for me in my life at the time. This is much more of a social activist album, but in the framework of the music and the process that it was done, it's the first time since Filthpig that I've actually been in a studio with a full band recorded live. So in that sense, instead of just me and an engineer and computers, and then do all, fix it in the mix later, this is 75 to 85% of this album was recorded in 1 week in a studio in Los Angeles with a live band. So in that sense, it's much different than previous Ministry records since like mid '90s.
Yeah.
So that was exciting for me. I really wish you could were able to hear this record a few more times before we talk, and maybe we could even set up a follow-up after this interview, where after you listen to it a few times, because I'm that convinced that this is probably the best work I've ever done under the name Ministry, anyways.
Well, that's a pretty strong statement, if you don't mind me giving you that feedback. You've had some tremendous albums in your time. I'm even a big fan of your early synth pop work. I think there was a lot of innovation in that I could hear carry on through a lot of the bands that more sort of underground pop bands throughout the 80s and into the 90s. But, there's one song in your career that I actually do hold above all others. So I want to ask for your comment about the track Paisley, because it wasn't released on an album, I don't think. I had it on a copy of the Escape from LA soundtrack. But Paisley, tell me about that track. Is it an important track in the canon of work that you've released as an artist under Ministry?
Well, outside of you and me, it wasn't. But yes, to me, and it's funny that every so often around the world, as I travel over the years, I get somebody that comes up and asks me about that song, and that song was against better judgment and against all odds. Everyone else hated that song in the band at the time. My management hated it. Everyone hated it. And I just decided to record it. And I was in a real crisis mode personally while recording that song. That song was the last gasp of a deranged junkie, basically. I didn't know how to beat my addiction, and it was a cry for help kind of thing. I don't mean to get all, mushy on you and shit, but
no, you're right.
That song meant a lot to me. It didn't mean a lot to anybody else. So
no,
whatever. I recorded it, and I stand by it.
Oh, I'm glad you do, mate. Yeah, there's actually a copy of a live recording on YouTube where Barker's bass is up so loud that it drowns out everything else. He's playing an acoustic bass. Have you seen that YouTube video?
Yeah, that was the Bridge benefit where we did an acoustic kind of ministry type of set at the behest of Neil Young, who's a buddy of ours, and he asked us to do his Bridge benefit that he has every year, or had every year. I don't know if it's still going. I think they just canceled it last year. Yeah, we had like 3 days rehearsal, and we just decided to do that, and I think we did a couple Grateful Dead covers, and Lay Lady Lay, and couple other things to make it all acoustic, and yeah, that day was a trip. That day, trust me. But either way, yeah, it was fun. Well, as far as to what my impetus is to sing about social activities, I take breaks from that. I mean, and it's funny because everyone pretty much it's kind of frustrating, but everyone associates ministry with like, okay, a right-wing government is in power in the United States, and so ministry is going to make a good hardcore album. And then whenever Democrats or the left-wing is, we suck, which things like Filthpig and all that, I don't think suck, but what they are is a deviation from just commenting on social conditions and going into more personal things. So this one is also social commentary, but it's not social commentary in the usual format that I do it in. This is much more about the system that produces people like Donald Trump than it is about Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is very low-hanging fruit. I mean, I spent almost a decade doing anti-Bush records and railing against Bush to the point to where the third album of that trilogy, I was feeling as sorry for him as I was for us as humanity. Just realizing that we're all part of this system, and this has been coming out in my music, content-wise, lyrically, since after From Beer to Eternity into Surgical Meth Machine, I just started looking at the bigger picture. And this album is a much bigger picture, Rage Against the Machine, if you will, kind of thing, as opposed to, we hate Bush, we hate Trump, we hate Reagan, we hate Malcolm Turnbull, we hate whoever, that these individuals are just like cysts, okay? You go to a doctor with a large lump on your neck, and they remove the cyst, but they don't ask you, like, why that cyst is there. You probably have cancer, okay? And this album is more about the cancer that invades and permeates all of society as opposed to the figurehead that's espousing its, it's venom, So this album goes a little bit deeper than just like, okay, Al's back, there's a Republican president, and so he's mad, and he's throwing a tantrum, and he's going to rail against Trump now, okay? It's a little bit more than that. I mean, to me, this album is pretty much like the audio equivalent of, like, say, Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror, right, where he holds a mirror up to society and says, okay, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, are you sure you want to be part of this? And my answer is, of course, no fucking way, but it's more of a purview of an overall global sociological condition and the system that produces that, whether it be through social media or politics or religion or what have you. What kind of systems have we created? And so that's what this album is much more about.
Tell me about the song TV54 Chan.
Which one?
It's TV54 Chan on the new album.
Oh, yeah. The 4chan, the 4chan one is a continuation of things that I've been doing for years, 20 years now. We have a series of the TV songs, starting on Psalm 69. It went through Filthpig. I had it on Surgical Meth Machine. So this is the fifth installation of just Burroughs and Brion Gisson type cut-ups of once again, a Black Mirror thing where, like, look, this is what we're actually hearing every day.
Yes.
This is what you're actually going on your computers and hearing. Do you like this? Because I don't, so it's purposely meant to be annoying, and I've been doing that for about 20 years.
I like the way you nestled it in between, because, it does come on pretty strong in between the song with the title Victims of a Clown, so we don't have to guess who you're talking about there potentially, and also something, probably the most profound title of any of the songs on the new album, We're Tired of It.
Yeah, well, that comes right out of the 4chan cut-up that I did, and we are tired of it. And Burton Bell from Fear Factory actually wrote the lyrics to that one. He was around for the whole recording process. We're old buddies from about 20 years, ongoing. And he happened to be, his schedule was perfect to where he was off at the time, so he was just hanging around the studio, basically being a pest, and I finally just said, well, fucking do something. And so he came up with these lyrics after hearing, he was there while I was working on the cut-up for this, and then came up with that, and I think it just absolutely nails it. We're tired of it.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, now, I have prepared some questions about what's going on in the political sphere in 2018 for you. So I'd love to get your take on some of these things here, because I know, here's my first question. I know you've been vocal in your support in the past of Elizabeth Warren. However, many find her claims to Native American heritage coincidental only insofar as it seems to help her advance her own interests as a public figure. So, for something that is so hard to substantiate and carries with it a very personal sense of obligation to a community, what's your take on her claims to Indigenous heritage, and why do you think that's even important if voters predominantly focus on policy?
Well, okay, let's get back to the system again. Okay, so in order to get elected, you have to tell white lies here and there and all that. And I'm not saying that it is a white lie, that, she is or is not Native American. Who the fuck cares? How many lies does Trump tell in a fucking single given moment, let alone something that, okay, well, I heard stories that my grandfather was a Cherokee chief or something like that. Whatever. What is your policies going to do for the individual, while you're voting? Well, we're voting for Trump, which lies every other minute out of his mouth, and also instituting policies that don't benefit the people that are voting for him, at least Elizabeth Warren. I can overlook that. I don't really fucking care how many porn stars Trump fucked or how many banks he's fucked and this and that. This really doesn't matter to me. It's very similar to me, like the Me Too movement that is going on right now, which is like, once again, let's get back to the system. I don't really fucking care who grabbed whose ass, who looked at whose tits, who said the wrong thing, who came on too strong after a bunch of alcohol in a party, who did this and that. That's not what the Me Too movement should be about. The Me Too movement should be about is why women get paid 73 cents on the dollar, why women hold no positions of power, whether it be in business, industry, entertainment, whatever. The problem is why are men from birth, with our educational system, taught to feel enabled that we are able to do this stuff? So men aren't doing anything wrong because that's what we've been taught that it's okay to do. And women, go around being like the only way to get ahead in life is to be a subservient and to latch on to somebody famous and all that, because they have no possibilities of their own. They have to latch on to a man. This is the system that's creating this stuff. So when we start trivializing it and getting into who grabbed whose ass or who said what, is Elizabeth Warren Indian or not? Is Trump a serial rapist, liar, misogynist, racist? All this shit. What kind of system produces these people that makes us vote for these people? And the system is what's sick. It's not the individuals. We're trivializing the whole thing. This goes back to the 1960s, where the marches and the rallies in the 60s and the civil rights and the gay rights and all these wonderful topics that needed to be discussed were discussed and then trivialized to where all we got out of the 60s was Woodstock, LSD, pot, and bell-bottoms.
Yes.
And
I understand,
incremental a few incremental cosmetic changes, to where, you could have a white guy kissing a black girl on TV, like in 1965 with James T. Kirk on the Starship Enterprise and Uhuru. I mean, these are all cosmetic changes. We never really get to the bottom of what causes this system, because they want to obfuscate and divide and conquer the people, especially through social media now, which is just like a weaponized. This is more powerful than a nuclear weapon, as we found out, that we've turned the age of information into the age of disinformation. And so people are completely fucking confused, as if they weren't confused enough already. So we're not getting to the issues, and we still aren't, which is what's scary. Like just the fact that people are talking about, like, whether Elizabeth Warren is an American Indian or not shouldn't matter. What is her policies? What does she want to do? And does she have the power to actually pull that off? Does she have the capabilities and the wherewithal to steer a Congress in a democracy to bend to the will of the people instead of bending to the will of special interests? So these are topics that we need to discuss, instead of all this trivialized chatter, this white noise that goes on, in your head day and night. And this is part of the agenda by the ruling class, to make sure that people are divided and conquered and fearful of their neighbors. If they don't look like them, then you should be fearful. Divide and conquer. Keep the people in fear, and keep the people preoccupied with how many likes they get on sharing a video of a rat taking a shower or a cat playing piano, as opposed, while you're worrying about how many likes you got on sharing some kind of trivial thing, they're taking away our benefits, our pensions. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I get it.
Of the system.
You mentioned something really important there that I'd like your opinion on further, okay? So you mentioned the ruling class. A lot of people hypothesize, and I don't want to, there's buzzwords out there might be Illuminati or whatever it might be, but is there a system of governance above the American Congress that is controlling things, in your view?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, this has been proven over and over, but it's just like, since the media is controlled by the same people, yes, they release little nuggets and tidbits of things that are actually happening, like secret space programs, like moon bases, like reptilians, alien visitations, this and that.
Yes.
And but what they do is they release it in nuggets and tidbits, and then poo-poo the whole thing, just like, oh, isn't this clever? This is almost as funny as a rat taking a shower. The fact that we have moon bases on the far side of the moon and things like this. They try and trivialize everything when all these things are actually happening. I'm not a conspiracy nut freak, I swear to you. It's just that, it's just like what they do, what they teach us in history. Our education system is so fucked up. From day one, not only do we slant the system against women, but we also teach us things like, for instance, sciences. Like, okay, archaeology-wise, they've disproven almost every theory that we have in our history books. So history is completely suspect. And you wonder why people fall for fake news on social media. It's because we've been trained since day one of our education to believe in fake news. So of course we're going to believe in all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories. But when actual scientists start coming up with, like, look, we invented carbon dating, and we can carbon date this to be like civilizations were here 200,000 years ago, not 6,000 years ago. This and that. So we're from birth, and religion reinforces that with their, like, Jesus walked with dinosaurs, and the world was created in 7 days. This and that. These are interpretations by primitive people that we're still going by, and we haven't updated anything. This is, once again, what I'm railing against is the system that we have created or allowed to be created by certain few.
So I'm with you completely when you say you're not a conspiracy theorist, because I believe you. Neither am I, okay? But it's just so obvious that there has been some sort of extraterrestrial influence in our application of technology. And I'd like to ask you this question on that point. Okay, so how much influence do you think from, I don't know how else to describe it, because I don't want anybody who's listening to the program to say, okay, I'm going to set you, but you're a pair of conspiracy nuts and you're talking about things that can't be proven. But the rise in the application of technology...
But they have been proven. But they have been proven. That's the thing, that they want us to make us think. They want to make us think that it hasn't been proven. And this is all conspiratorial theories. But these things have been proven. I mean, why do you go by carbon dating for certain things, like archaeology, for instance, like Lucy, the primate, the Homo erectus that was basically the mother of our, evolution. That's okay. Carbon dating works for that, but it doesn't work for like the flood lines on the Sphinx, which make it at least 12,000 years older than what they've already established. So, they just confuse and obfuscate everything. So these things actually have been proven. So, let's be careful when we say, you know what I'm saying? Okay.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. I just, because, you and I are of the same, cut from the same cloth in the way that we think. And if I try to have these sorts of discussions outside of talking to somebody like yourself, I can see people's eyes glaze over and they start looking at the corner of the room waiting for me to finish whatever I'm saying so that they can change the subject.
That's the story of my life, mate. Story of my life.
But yeah,
I truly believe that's why I'm not Trent Reznor and I don't have a big mansion on the hill and all that shit. Is because when I start speaking, people just roll their eyes and go in the corner and go, "When is he going to be finished?"
Oh, well, mate, you can talk as much as you want with me, but hey, I'm going to take another right-hand turn. I'm going to ask you about Robert Mueller because I saw you with a T-shirt on only recently on the nuclear blast video that was released to YouTube. So his indictment of 13 Russian operatives for interfering in the US election is contributed significantly to the following. So the Russians paid... So I'm going to throw a few figures at you, so apologies here. There's only 2 or 3, but still. The Russians paid $46,000 to Facebook for advertising prior to the 2016 election. So that really means that's how much effective financial contribution to the election, or to trying to change the election, if we want to put it that way. $1.25 million has been attributed to Russia's Internet Research Agency monthly spend on its election influence campaign overall. So if it's $46,000 to Facebook, overall, Mueller's... committee, I think, worked out that they spent $1.25 million overall. However, leveraging that against the combined spend of the Trump and Clinton campaign overall, which was listed as an incredible $81 million. So my question to you, Al, is this. Is Mueller's prosecution akin to a witch hunt if you were focusing only on those numbers?
Well, first of all, those numbers are a lot larger for the Clinton and Trump campaigns. They're each literally around $1 billion, thanks to Citizens United, a Supreme Court decision. But what Russia's doing is basically taking things out of the American playbook that they did in the 1950s and 60s in South America. They realized that an armed response was too costly, which they forgot about when they decided to invade the Middle East and occupy, because conquering is a lot different than actually governing. And they found out that that's too expensive, so they just conquered just for the fuck of it, to use some of the weapons that we've spent all this money on. But what we did in South America in the 1950s was exactly the playbook that we set up for the Russians to do to ourselves. So I just figure it's karma. But the whole point is that all this is just like fun and games for these people. In the meanwhile, look what's happening in Yemen and Syria right now. I mean, these people are fucking suffering, man.
Yeah.
While we're playing war games, like theoretical war games. This reminds me of a scene from The Omen 2, where Damien, which is now running a large corporation, is just like, okay, let's start a famine here because it'll make more profit here, correlated through trade. And these are the kind of things that places people like Monsanto and shit do. Okay, let's start this here and this here. What's going on in Cape Town, South Africa now is mind-blowing, and nobody's picking up on it because everybody's worried about who Trump fucked and what porn star he paid off. Cape Town, South Africa is out of fucking water, mate. So here's the deal, man. But now they because of water restrictions. They've now made it through July 9th is now called the 0 Day, which, by the way, I'm working on a song that I'm going to release called 0 Day, because we are really approaching 0 Day, to where any inhabitant of Cape Town, South Africa, a city of 3 million people, has to go to the army checkpoint to get water for the day if they want to remain in that region, because of bad zoning, bad planning, all sorts of, and of course climate change, which of course has brought on the drought. But these people literally are allowed 10 gallons a day of water, okay? Yes. And that includes bathing, washing, eating, and all this. And this is a major metropolis. Now, Los Angeles has been in a drought now for 10 years. 1 year, last year was okay, and it was great, and everyone says, oh, the drought's over. No, it's not over, because of the environment and the policies that we've instituted. So now, so Cape Town, according to Trump, is, it's in a shithole continent and this and that, and so nobody should pay attention. But don't you understand how that correlates to other major seafaring cities and metropolises like Los Angeles, that we are going to hit 0 Day very soon in Los Angeles as well? It may not be imminent, and that's what politicians do. They only want to look at the imminent. Everything is reactionary as opposed to forward.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. It is. It's all reactive. Our government. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's all fucked up, but once again, it gets back down to the system, which is what this whole album's about, and what we should be thinking about, instead of all the, he said, she said, who did what, when, where, let's get to the fucking root of the matter here, man. Let's take out the cancer, not the cyst.
Okay, final question for you. Okay, and I'm actually going to ask John if we can link up again, because I've only touched the edges here on the questions that I've actually got prepared for you. But, mate, my final question for you is that, according to Vice Motherboard, Obama's administration sold more weapons than any other since World War II, and many were sold to the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia. Now, you've been keeping up with things, so you'll know that what's going on in Yemen and the like is a bit of a skirmish between them. Well, it's far more than a skirmish, I shouldn't use that term, between them and Saudi Arabia. But Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009, ironically. And very few, if any, left-leaning artists and celebrities have said anything in public about this. So that's one contentious issue, but what's your take on Obama's legacy?
Well, okay, here we go again. We can point the finger at Obama and that he allowed this to happen, but the reason it had to happen was because of Bush's policies right before that, to start war in the Middle East, to where everyone got freaked out and paranoid, to where they all had to defend themselves. And don't tell me that Boeing and Northrop weren't shilling their arms, all the arms dealers, fanning that paranoia and building a powder keg in the Middle East. And it's not Bush's fault. It's not Obama's fault. It's the military-industrial complex's fault. Like we said, do you think these presidents are actually in charge? They're just figureheads. I mean, we can point the finger at Obama for the chronological dates of when weapons were sold, but those weapons were sold because of policies that were set up for Bush by the military-industrial complex, which made people paranoid enough to do that. And Trump is not in charge, and all these people, they're not in charge. We're all railing against the wrong people. Trump is just really low-hanging fruit because he's such a caricature of such a heathen of a human being, almost reptilian in nature, with his lack of empathy and lack of curiosity. It's incredible, but we fixate on that instead of what creates these people and these scenarios. And so, once again, I can't comment on Obama or Bush anymore, and I spent a large chunk of my life commenting on Bush, really thinking he was the problem, and he is not the problem. Neither is Trump. Neither was Obama.
Okay, there you have it. Well, I better end, mate, because I know somebody else is going to call you pretty soon. But look, as I mentioned in the beginning, thank you so much for creating the wonderful music you have. You've enjoyed an outstanding career. Long may you reign and keep on releasing the albums that you do. And here's a final thought. I'd love for you to team up with Jello again and do something under the Lard banner, because Pure Chewing Satisfaction, that's another album that's right up there for me.
I would love to do that too. But listen, Andy, I was serious about the fact that if you ever...
Well, that's it. That's my conversation with Al Jourgensen. I would love to reprise that discussion and dive deeper into Al's thoughts on many matters that occur throughout the world in 2018 and beyond. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Andrew Mackay Smith, and you've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast.